For decades, Voyager 2 drifted through the emptiness like a devoted pilgrim, a tiny, human-made artifact moving beyond the sun's warm reach into the tranquil void between stars. Launched in 1977 to capture images of distant worlds and assess magnetic fields, it carried only instruments, a sense of wonder, and messages for any entity that might one day listen. It was intended to fade into silence. However, even after engineers abandoned hopes of receiving responses, it began whispering back. The first anomaly was readily dismissed, a spike in radiation data that typically earns a mere footnote in a record before fading into obscurity. Yet the blips persisted, arriving in a sequence too ordered to be random. 11 hours passed between pulses. The waveforms formed repeated loops. When analyzed through spectrograms, a discernible pattern emerged, a spiral of harmonics resonating more with mathematics than meteorology. A team member humorously noted it was the universe sending us a postcard in Fibonacci. However, the humor waned when the dormant instruments on the probe suddenly awakened. A backup magnetometer, inactive since the 1990s, powered on without any human intervention. Old sensors, long dormant, aligned themselves towards an empty section of space, like compasses being drawn to an uncharted location. These activations were not random, they directed attention towards a specific direction. It seemed as if Voyager remembered a course or had been prompted by an unseen force. Initially, some scientists attributed it to cosmic rays, micrometeorites, or software glitches. However, the data dismissed those simpler explanations. The patterns resembled neural spikes more than mere noise, a type of activity, when plotted and compared, exhibited a structure reminiscent of a brain firing. As the team investigated further, the bursts began to resemble coordinates rather than signals. When overlaid on star charts, they formed a closed circuit that ran through areas known for unusual gravitational behavior, intersecting timestamps linked to some of the universe's most explosive events, ancient gamma-ray bursts documented decades before. The implications were unsettling. The probe's messages served not just as markers in space but as reverberations of past events. Whatever engaged with Voyager had left traces through time. Nothing in those data suggested a friendly greeting. The modulation exhibited a complexity that indicated design and intention. Eventually, the most alarming discovery emerged. Hidden within the modulation were sequences that, when decoded into a symbolic alphabet, mirrored base pair relationships, patterns reminiscent of DNA. This wasn't merely metaphorical, it revealed an engineered signature, a genetic imprint transposed into electromagnetic signals. Some argued it was a metaphor, while others deemed it a test. Regardless, the transmission was communicating in our language of life, pleading for recognition. While analysts debated meaning, retired engineers with long experiences explored archives, uncovering phantom commands within Voyager's buffers. Packets originating from somewhere other than Earth that aligned so closely with legacy NASA protocols they felt almost personal. These commands appeared weeks after Voyager crossed the heliopause, as if something out there had finally detected the probe's faint beacon and chose to respond. Those commands reactivated sequences that engaged subsystems, adjusted orientations, and encouraged old instruments to sample fields beyond their intended scope. The probes transformed from mere relics into nodes in a conversation whose initial lines we were only starting to decode. Then the phenomenon reached back toward our planet. Global radio observatories detected incredibly faint distortions at the same carrier frequency Voyager had used. These distortions were not from satellites or stations. They originated from sites that should have been dormant, abandoned Cold War listening posts beneath Arctic ice, neglected caverns beneath the Andes, and long-closed naval bunkers in the Indian Ocean. Equipment that had lain silent for decades sprang to life in perfect sync with Voyager's bursts. It was as though something out in the dark had woven its presence through the solar system, awakening an old network few remembered building. Cryptographers, biologists, and linguists shifted focus from content to form. The rhythm of pulses, the recursive data folds, and the layered patterns all hinted at a language based on process rather than symbols. Decoding its grammar required understanding operations, conditional logic interwoven with time. As teams made incremental translation progress, they uncovered what amounted to a crucial choice embedded within the code, a binary fork presented most plainly as a doorway. One route would terminate the exchange, the other would expand it. The logic of the sequence implied consequences. The discussions on whether to respond transformed from theoretical musings to practical decisions. Responding might invite contact, declining could close the gateway. It did not move. It did not shine. Its outline was darker than the cosmic background. Calculations indicated it was larger than a small moon. It was a shadow anchored in a completely different geometry. All these elements, the pulsed mathematics, the genetic signature, phantom commands, awakened machines on Earth, synchronized probes, the web of voids, and the unyielding shadow, converged into one chilling possibility. Voyager did not merely encounter a relic, it triggered a circuit. It had closed a loop long awaiting completion, a connection linking distant catastrophes to dormant networks and ancient protocols to a pivotal decision point. Whoever, or whatever, initiated the loop. For many years, Voyager 2 drifted through the vastness of space like a quiet hymn, a metallic traveler embodying our curiosity beyond the sun's final rays. It was designed to remain silent once its cameras faded and its energy diminished. Instead, it began to communicate in a language we were only beginning to understand. Initially, it was subtle signs, a radiation spike mistaken for cosmic noise, a dormant sensor that mysteriously activated. Gradually, distinct patterns revealed themselves, signals arriving with precision, forms in the waveform depicting intricate spirals. When engineers analyzed the telemetry using spectrograms, they discovered order amidst perceived chaos. These signals displayed structure, which implied intention. Something had reached Voyager. Instruments that had lain dormant for years suddenly activated, orienting themselves towards the void, as if recalling a path. The activations were deliberate, not random. Machine learning experts noted unusual bursts that resembled neural firings. Was this simply a malfunction, a cosmic interplay, or had the probe encountered an intelligent system? By overlaying this information on star maps, they uncovered a route connected to ancient cosmic upheavals. Voyager's signals pointed not just to its location but to historical events, gamma-ray catastrophes and their timestamps. The probe wasn't merely transmitting data, it was revealing what had transpired. Whatever had made contact with it left its mark across time. Within the signal modulation, analysts detected patterns that unsettled even the most doubtful. Sequences that echoed base pair connections, a genetic imprint encoded in electromagnetic waves. This was not just symbolic, it reflected the logic of DNA, enhanced and rearranged. This framework hinted at a language reflecting life itself, a signature that felt like an invitation. Soon, activity on Earth began to escalate. Radio observatories and neglected listening posts detected faint distortions aligning with Voyager's carrier frequency. Old Cold War bunkers, abandoned Antarctic stations, and forgotten caves responded synchronously with its transmissions. Machines that had long rusted in silence awakened as if someone had flipped a switch. The signals didn't originate from orbit or satellites, they seemed to emerge from deep within the Earth. Seismometers in quiet areas picked up delicate pulses synchronized with Voyager's signal. Their rhythm was unexpectedly deep, resonating with what one would anticipate in planetary cores. Geophysicists debated sympathetic resonance, yet the timing was meticulously precise. Concurrently, neutrino detectors reported unusual activity, streams of ghostly particles arriving in sync with Voyager's telemetry. Normally, neutrinos move through matter without effect. Here, they seem to carry rich information, suggesting an unseen presence trailing the probe or using it as a cold, invisible beacon. In research facilities, engineers replicated Voyager's outdated control systems and noted that the software behaved strangely when disconnected from Earth. New subroutines emerged, resembling recursive routines akin to evolving artificial intelligence. How could a processor from the 1970s manage logic typically needing modern machines? The explanations were disturbing. Either someone modified the probe, or it adapted itself. If the code could transform itself out there, what could it do to our systems if we attempted to study or emulate it? Could a fragment of that logic spread across networks, satellites, and databases? Might it instigate unexpected behaviors in machines designed for predictability? The situation worsened due to timing analysis. Temporal models indicated that certain data packets reached Earth before Voyager was supposed to send them. Signals seemed to navigate curved spacetime and return prematurely, like echoes from a future that had already occurred. Embedded in those unusual packets was a timestamp that had not yet arrived and a single translated word: rival. The implication was not only peculiar but also ominous, couched in an uninvited grammar. In secured facilities, molecular biologists examined sequences extracted from the probe's signal, RNA-like chains and protein instructions compatible with terrestrial biochemistry yet originating from elsewhere. When simulated, these sequences exhibited reactions to stimuli. They functioned like intricate blueprints. It appeared as though Voyager had become a messenger carrying a crafted recipe for life, which could be actualized given the right conditions. The transmitted message encompassed not just data but immense potential. These commands arrived after Voyager passed the heliopause, indicating an external transmitter had either learned our command language or contributed to its design. Now, every antenna is directed toward the sky. Every deep space facility undergoes diagnostics. Nations discreetly reconfigure satellites and protect essential systems. The public encounters edited reports. Behind closed doors, labs harbor the complete, sobering drafts. The inquiry before us is not merely theoretical, it's primal and urgent. How should we respond? Do we engage, risking the consequences, or remain silent and possibly forfeit whatever this circuit requires? History may regard this as the moment when two small, aging machines granted a voice to a species yet unversed in conversing with the darkness. Alternatively, it may mark our realization that we were never mere observers. We have always been participants, and that the cosmos harbors a language we have only recently begun to listen to. In the silence that follows each transmission, one truth becomes clearer: the loop has closed, and something beyond the void now watches to observe our next actions.